Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callus. It is episode 749. 749. Today I'm going to entitle the episode Tying Up Loose Ends. And yeah, that's a bit of a pun. If you live in my hometown, you kind of maybe get the reference, but tying up loose ends. I will post this on Tuesday the 24th. Maybe there will be some resolutions to some of the things I bring up before then, but we shall see. I'm not holding my breath. Okay. Where do we start? Oh, yes. Let's do this. The show is not over. The show, I got to say, I apologize. I missed a whole week. Life gets in the way, and it's a good problem. Being busy with work, that means you get to stay employed. That means you get to keep a job. And having taken a unscheduled 6-month sabbatical, I'm going to prioritize that. And if you're listening to the sound of my voice, I imagine you all have a regular job too. And you've got things that you need to do. Respectfully, we all do. So that's why we do what we do. We work so that we can live our lives and do the things that we would really like to do. Some people live for work. There's nothing wrong with that. Striking the balance in between is the challenge. So that being said, for as long as I can continue, I will do this. And the once a week is about what I'm going to be able to swing for the foreseeable future. But my ask, and this is not an insignificant ask, this matters. The liking, the sharing, the following, the subscription, it all matters. The social media is a mixed bag. It always has been. The algorithms do not work in your favor if you deviate from the approved conversation. Now, I like to say I tackled some challenging topics over the years. I'd like to say that I didn't live by fear, but you can't do everything all the time, and you can only pick so many battles. So that being said, what does that mean? That means that we're going to continue to do what we can do to make a difference, to impact the outcome of everything around us. So join me on my efforts here. Look, I'm not looking for you to 100% fall in line. I'm not looking for you guys to be my acolytes. I just want you to give me a fair shake. If you've listened to one episode and it turns you off, well, do yourself a favor, do me a favor. Listen to a few other episodes, get a feel on the bearings. A lot of what I do is talk about things and give you a couple of points of view or a couple of angles, if you will. I want you to develop your own opinion. Now, look, whatever my opinion is, and I'm usually pretty straightforward about it, I feel pretty confident about it because I've given it some thought, I've done some investigation, but it doesn't mean I can't get it wrong. And I have always taught my kids, and I've told family members, I don't expect you to always agree with me, but I do expect you to have an understanding why you believe what you believe and be able to defend yourself beyond a name calling, beyond, short answers. Now, granted, short answers are useful from time to time, but to say somebody is an idiot is not an answer. To call somebody a fascist is not an answer. I suspect there are very few legitimate fascists left in the world today, but I will unequivocally say there are a whole lot of collectivists. There's a whole lot of socialists, some that don't even realize they're socialists. But reality, in my mind, is it's utopian in nature, right? A lot of people believe if they were just in charge, they could fix everything. If we just did everything my way, it would be all right. And that's kind of what I've been talking about indirectly this entire time. They're wrong. So, before we get on with the show, like I said, follow me on your social media of choice. Put me on your podcatcher of choice. They're all available. They're all out there. It is not that hard to find, according to Callis. Just be patient. With that, here we go on with the program. All right, so my city now has new leadership. It could also be rephrased as meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But we did get fooled again. Again, I want to be careful how I say this. And I want to be fair. I want to be objective. Always. I don't know the new mayor personally. I have offered to sit down with him indirectly with several people that I would say are mutual friends or acquaintances. I don't expect anything special. If I can get 15 or 20 minutes, that would be great. But I don't expect it. I suspect that I am low on the list of priorities. And I'm not offended by that, because who am I? I'm nobody special. I live in the city just like everybody else. Maybe I have a little bit more of a platform than some other folks. Maybe some of my activism or my political, let's say, connections are maybe get me a little leg up on some folks. But to make demands based upon what a title is fruitless and not impressive, quite frankly. So the real issue is, will this leadership be different in operation? I have no doubt the leadership style will be different. I have no doubt that the attitude will be different. I suspect that there will be the ghost of the previous mayor around for quite some time. From what I'm told, the former mayor has a home. I want to say it was Colorado Springs. I know it's Colorado. I just don't remember the exact city. One interesting aside. The venue that is building in McKinney also has its home base in Colorado. And if I'm not mistaken, their only operating, functioning location is in Colorado Springs. Now, I could have that wrong. I could be remembering that incorrectly. Just find that a bit curious. I mean, it could have been that way all along. I mean, there could have been a long-term goal established, a decade ago, that the former mayor was going to retreat up to Colorado. I have no doubt he'll be more comfortable up there. Things are a little bit more laid back. Certainly a different air and different permissiveness, if you will. Not disparaging, because everybody's different, right? I'm just observing what is readily apparent. So the new guy, I suspect that most of the policies are going to stay the same. And I suspect that not because that the former mayor was necessarily driving the agenda, but was just put the face on the agenda. So I couldn't help but notice over the weekend the airline that signed a contract with us has, I guess, been made public. Not excited. I mean, nobody ever really thought we were going to get Southwest Airlines up here, did you? We're a second-tier airport at best. That being said, I think there's a lot of good, beneficial things that could be done with our airport. I'm not sure that we would ever be anything other than a secondary location. For those unaware, there is a much better location right up the road in Sherman, just west of 75, in an old Air Force base, which has 2 runways and has got significantly better infrastructure. So I imagine the rush was on to get McKinney up and functional before that got reactivated into a live airport. And I get it. And respectfully, I see the value of having a regional airport in McKinney. I just don't know if maybe they sold us on some bogus expectations. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we do very well there, because we're already in, right? We're in for both the penny and the pound at this point. I guess literally and figuratively. The powers that be, if you will, has their heart set on this. I imagine there's going to be a significant payoff to a number of people, and they want to make sure that they get that. Because I can assure you, if it fails or if it loses more, we're going to eat that. But when the profits are to be made, I'm fairly certain the city of McKinney that we, the taxpayers, aren't going to see the return that we would expect. We'll just put it that way. My hope is, under the new leadership, there will be a renegotiation. There will be a reapproachment, that somebody will say, hey, you know what? Maybe we ought to rethink the terms of this contract. Just hopeful, wishful thinking on my part. I also saw something about DART coming up here. I don't think it's the end of the world, but I will say unequivocally, I believe it would not be a net positive. Anybody that thinks that it is a net positive need go no further than Plano to see where, yeah, there's some positive aspects to it. This is true, but there's also a whole lot of negative that goes along with it. And on balance, I don't think it's a net positive. Are some people going to benefit? Yes, absolutely. Are some people going to lose out? Yes, absolutely. We need to weigh all that. We need to be honest about it before we sign any agreements on this. The interesting thing that a lot of people seem to always forget, and I've been trying to remind people, municipal elections are never really going to go the way of a hard Republican. They're just not. The best we can do is to get good, solid, we'll call them moderate Republicans in there that have a good business savvy, that are socially conservative but don't wear it on their sleeve, right? That's the best we're going to be able to do. And if that's the case, we need to make sure we keep them tempered so they don't see all these great citywide projects as a way to make a name for themselves, because they never really work out the way they tell us. They just don't. I think there are some value added things that can come from parks and, proper roads, decent infrastructure. And with any government entity, you would think that's a priority, but they want the flashy things that people see, that they can put their names on and pat themselves on the back. And then when there's budget cuts, they always make sure that you feel the pain with the budget cuts. The school district has floated out a bond, right? And we are under new leadership there too, right? We've got at least two new members of the board, the school district, and the relatively new superintendent. They're already looking for hundreds of millions of dollars in a new bond for things that they should have been foreseen for a decade. Interestingly enough to me is, while the enrollment has gone down, the cost has continued to rise. Now, they put in their little poll that it's been an 18% increase due to inflation. That tracks. I've been saying it's been about 20% for a little while now. So I find it interesting that the school district is finally admitting what the state and national government refused to acknowledge. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had about a 20% increase in costs. So if that's the case, and we're going to be honest with each other, if that's the case, yeah, that means they're going to need more money just to keep up. The problem is, you and I, we haven't made more money. The workers, we don't see that money. Now they're going to assess the value of our home up 25, 30, 40% and extract more money that way. So with just the home evaluations skyrocketing, you would think that they would be able to keep pace with inflation, but no, that we're going to need more money on top of that. And again, new leadership ought to be evaluating different things that they could do and do differently that would be more efficient, more cost effective, but they don't seem interested in doing that. But they're quick to tell you, well, if you don't give us our money, we might have to cut some teachers. We might have to affect the classrooms. Never mind that we might close down an underperforming school that's not necessary in that area any longer. Never mind that we, I don't know, might get rid of a couple of the assistant superintendents that we didn't have until about 2 years ago. We couldn't maybe streamline the processes on some of the other things to where you could get rid of the administrative staff that are not a value add for the students in the classroom. Nope. We're going to strike at the people that actually make things work. That would be the teachers in the classrooms. And yes, look, I know not all teachers are created the same. Some teachers are downright terrible. I get it. But the vast majority go there. They do a good job. They want to be treated with respect. They want to get paid for their time. They're not the ones running around claiming to be heroes and then demanding to be highly paid professionals at the same time. No, that would never happen. There is a dichotomy there, right? Because a lot of teachers do come from the mindset this is a calling. They've been called heroes, whether you think that's fair or not. I'm at least willing to entertain the fact that people that go into education know from the onset that they're not going to make a lot of money, that they're not going to become rich, but they do it because they think it's beneficial and they know that it's a value add for society, but they also expect to be taken care of. They're trading off a higher paycheck for long-term stability. I get it. I'm not offended by that. I think a lot of government employees have done that over the years. They don't get the golden or platinum or diamond plated parachutes that CEOs that go into companies get. But I mean, we're going to say that's silver plated at the very least, right? You're going to get paid a percentage of what you made when you're actually contributing for the rest of your life, however long that may be. I mean, theoretically, you start teaching at age 25 and look, a lot of folks don't do this. They might do 25, 30 years, assuming they get past the first 5 years, right? So you teach for that 25 years, or we'll just be generous and say 30 years. So you teach till you're 55. You continue to get money for 20 years plus after that. That's a burden on society. But the question is, did we benefit enough that we can accept that burden? And I would say you can make an argument either way on that one. I think that's a fair call, right? Somebody gave 30 years to their lives to bringing up, 2 generations worth of students. Do we owe them a debt of gratitude? Yeah, absolutely. Do we need to fund them for the rest of their lives? Maybe. You can make that argument. Although if you are capable and physically able, don't you maybe have a responsibility to still look out for yourself? Just saying. I mean, in between Social Security and your retirement, the teacher retirement fund, most of these folks, they're not hurting. They're going to tell you they're on a fixed income, which is true, but they're also a lot better off than a whole lot of other people that worked their entire tails off and didn't get a pension, didn't get a retirement. Now, maybe they made a little more money when they were younger, but they didn't have that guaranteed retirement plan. Just something to consider. There's pluses and minuses on both sides of this equation. Somebody makes a concerted effort to do that, but then they can't get past the first 5 years of teaching because, let's face it, dealing with students is part of the problem, but dealing with the parents is usually the bigger problem, right? There are a lot of, I think the term is, Karen, I'm going to go with Yankee because, as I've told you, I believe Yankee is the appropriate term that should be utilized when describing people rather than Karen. Because there are a lot of legit Karens that I know and you know that are perfectly fine people that we don't need to be insulting. But Yankees, on the other hand, in Texas, I don't think anybody really likes a Yankee. And I say that as a reformed Yankee, mind you. All right. So I've kind of beat this dead horse here. So let's transition over. Old friends. So people, as they get involved, they change approaches. They think about things differently. They mature. That includes myself, by the way. I mean, I know several people that remember me in the old days when I was more of a firebrand than I am now. And it's not so much that my message has changed, it's my delivery. It's not so much that I think differently, it's just that I'm a little more diplomatic than what I once was. I've always been cautious to not be too quick to speak. Not that I always do a good job of holding my tongue, but I always want to hear everybody else out. I want to hear what both sides of the equation are. I want to be fair. I want to be objective. Who knows? There might be something else going on that I don't know that is actually helpful, or maybe changes me to reassess where I'm coming from. Now, a personal friend of mine, is going through that right now. A couple of months ago, we talked about how does that look? How do you accomplish that? What are you trying to get out of this? And I hope he's being very successful. He's still my friend. I still got his back. It's very disappointing that the change of tactics was met with the angst that he was abandoning his principles and he's going the other way. He's joining the other side. Yeah, I don't think any of that's true. As they say, the proof is in the pudding. And you got to watch what people do, not just what they say. It's important to be gracious and even-handed. It's important to be respectful. I got to tell you, it's fun to throw bombs, metaphorically speaking, right? It's fun to be obnoxious, but is it productive? I can tell you firsthand, it's never been. It's never really worked. Maybe it gets your attention and you open with a zinger and then you talk serious and objective. Maybe people listen. Okay, that's fair. I've said many, many times this show would probably be 10 times bigger than it is now, maybe even larger than that, if I was to be over the top, obnoxious, always attacking, always beating up, always calling other people names. I mean, that sells, right? But is it doing a service? Is it really the appropriate way? I mean, I live in McKinney, Texas. I do a lot of different things around Collin County. I want to be able to see people in town in real life and face them. If you're an obnoxious twit that's always on the radio bashing people and calling them names, do people really want to interact with something like that? And at what part do you maybe just come to the conclusion that's all for show? They don't really actually mean any of that. I mean, one of the reasons why I always thought that Rush Limbaugh was extremely effective is he used humor. He did some name calling, but it was usually, we'll call it descriptive, dismissive name calling, not necessarily abusive, rude name calling. And I think that's an effective tactic. But what were the odds that Mr. Limbaugh was going to be running across any of those people that he was talking smack about? I'd say up until probably the last 5-10 years of his career, next to nil. But that's not the world I live in. I've chosen to keep my show as focused on McKinney/Collin County as I could. And there's a pretty darn good chance I'm going to run across somebody that I know. And so I always want to be respectful. I want to be fair and even-handed. There is a certain level of objectivity in everything that I do. Right? You got to treat people fairly, no matter what you think about their politics or where they were born. It's part of being an adult. It's part of, quite frankly, I got to tell you, it's the golden rule. It's something coming out of Christianity, right? You're supposed to treat people like you would want to be treated. And there's multiple variations of how that is. I get it. The inverse has often been said, treat people how they treat you. There's something to be said about that as well. But doesn't that just perpetuate the problem, right? I mean, isn't that what we're watching playing out? We'll get to that in just a second. Again, this is the thing that everybody needs to remember. If you have an old friend, somebody that you know, somebody that you trust, and they start doing things a little bit differently, rather than assume the worst, rather than kick them to the curb, do them a courtesy. Give them a phone call. Go see them face to face. Talk it out. Now, you may still come away thinking, yeah, that's not something I'm willing to do. I can't be a part of that. And respectfully, we're gonna agree to disagree. I'm gonna disengage from this situation. I think that's appropriate once you've had an adult conversation. But knee-jerk reactions and screaming and calling names doesn't really ever solve anything, especially with somebody that you would have called a friend and an ally 6 months ago or 6 weeks ago. Does that not mean you shouldn't hold people accountable for their mistakes? Does it not, or does that mean that it's not appropriate to call people out if you think they're wrong? No, that's always the case. It's always appropriate. If you think somebody made a mistake, if you think somebody's got something wrong, yeah, you need to be upfront with them. But part of that is being upfront with them, not bashing them, not calling names, not talking smack behind their back. I've always had a policy that I won't say something about somebody behind their back that I wouldn't say to their face. I prefer that people don't come and tell me stories about somebody else. But I also know that if somebody's telling me a story and they say, hey, you can't repeat this, or you didn't hear this from me, or whatever else, there's probably a good reason why they're telling me. It's useful information, or it's a word of caution. And when somebody says, yeah, that's between you and I keep that. That's the way it is. I just like, okay, I got to file that for future use or reference. I wish more of our people would think about it that way. Okay. While we're on this topic of people that change tactics, so apparently it was decided to go take out some quote-unquote nuclear sites over in another country that has not attacked us. Now, whether you want to say we're doing the bidding of another country, whether you want to say we've made a mistake, whether you want to say it was presidential overreach, I'm not going to debate that. I will just say you've got a very good argument. But what I will say is very few people that supported the current president want this. Unfortunately, a significant portion of those people will change their tune because their leader told them to. For me, that is very disappointing. It's disheartening. There's a huge difference between a non-interventionist and an isolationist. The fact that there are a number of people that I would say I know online or I've met on occasion somewhere cannot keep the two straight, or they listen to the blowhard Mark Levin categorize things. It's just disappointing. Now, I am fully aware you can make a very good argument why you should take out nuclear sites for Iran. I get it. I do. But anybody thinks that's going to stop anything, anybody that thinks that they probably don't already have a nuclear weapon, you haven't been paying attention. Who benefits? I'm not benefiting from this. That being said, I'm not going to condemn it. I'm willing to extend the benefit of the doubt to those that are in a position to potentially know better than I. But I also want to say I'm putting it on a short leash. Yeah, we're gonna call this a mulligan, Mr. President. Mr. No New Wars. One of the reasons why I was happy to vote for you in 2024 is because you had a track record, a proven track record of not starting fights. Yeah, word wars, that's fine. Everybody can talk smack, I get it. But we went and bombed somebody because they're fighting with somebody else. I mean, to me, that makes about as much sense as getting involved in the Russia-Ukraine thing. Oh, wait, we're already doing that too. You see, it's not our fight. Maybe they're our ally, maybe they're not. I don't think Ted Cruz convinced a whole lot of people on Tucker Carlson's show. And I love Ted Cruz, by the way. And I'm very glad he is my U.S. Senator in the state of Texas. But that didn't look too good. It was not a good look. And you don't have to agree. You don't. I think there are legitimate arguments why we should do what we did, or there's legitimate arguments why we should do more than what we did. But you can only fight in so many battles, so many wars. You got to choose wisely. I mean, that's one of the things that I have referenced multiple times here on the local level, the county level, the state level. You can only pick so many fights. You can't fight every battle that comes down. That's why you need friends and allies. They need to find their passion issue and step up in the melee and do their part. You can't do it all as an individual. And I got to say, the United States, if we're going to be a beacon of liberty, if we're going to continue the idea that we're a representative government, we need to live by that. And those of you out there that are condemning this latest action by the current president, but were cheering the previous actions by the previous presidents, just stop. Just stop. When Joe Biden did it, it was wrong, in my opinion. When Barack Obama did it, it was wrong, in my opinion. When George W. Bush did it, it was wrong, in my opinion. Could you make arguments? Sure. Would it be best if these things, actually went through Congress? Yeah, probably. Would we ever get anything done if we went through Congress? Well, therein lies the rub. But again, the very same people that get upset when judges shut stuff down are now cheering that judges are way extending powers that they never were granted and doing nationwide edicts when they don't have that authority. Now, perhaps you could say, I want to pursue a constitutional crisis, but sometimes crises solve problems. The president has a lot of power, both constitutionally and, we'll say, inherently. Some of those inherent powers probably aren't for the best, but they're there. Nowhere has that power been granted to a federal judge. Specifically, the judges are only supposed to deal with things in their area in a specific case. So I'm not really sure why we should continue to pay attention to this, but that also plays into the hands of those that, want to say we're a lawless entity. Again, maybe you're right, but you didn't say anything for the previous administration, or the one before that, or the one before that, or the one before that. I don't like leading the country by executive orders. I think that's a mistake. And I would like for Congress to step in and curtail that, but I don't expect that to happen anytime soon. That being said, this directly relates to the fact that we're involved in yet another regional skirmish that it's dubious we need to be involved with in the first place. Now, I realize there are a lot of, we'll call them friends and allies of mine, that are of Jewish persuasion, whether it's ethnic or religious, that probably are not thrilled that I've said this, but I'm being consistent. I didn't think we should be messing around in the Ukraine. I don't think we should be messing around in Iran. I believe the president wants to make a deal. I believe the president wants peace. I believe this is a bargaining move. Whether or not it is still remains to be seen. The other piece of the puzzle is we never really know what the truth is, because pretty much everything we're getting from our government media is a lie, or at least a blatant fabrication to tell us what they want us to know, while maybe telling us some of the truth. But the idea when you testify in court is to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And clearly they didn't get that memo. In fact, our media now operates under the blessing from the federal government to misguide and fill us with propaganda. And here we are. This is the world today. So did we start a new war, or did we just stick our nose into an existing war? Don't know. We'll see. My hope is we're just changing tactics with an old enemy. And I guess that's the fourth topic we're going to talk about, right? We've covered new leadership. We've talked about old friends a little bit. Unfortunately, we've got potentially a new war. But old enemies, they never really seem to go away. It's interesting. The left has always been open about their choice of political violence, right? They support it unless it's used against them. I'm an advocate always of peaceful solutions. I'm an advocate always of negotiation. But when you're dealing with somebody that refuses to negotiate, when you're dealing with somebody who the only acceptable outcome to them is violence, perhaps death, what other option are you left with? And I think that's the very real situation that's going on right now in the Oval Office. How do I deal with Iran? What are we going to do here? And again, if you can believe what you see, and I don't know that you can, supposedly 80% of the people that live in Iran don't actually like the government they have in Iran. I mean, we're talking about ancient Persia here. As a matter of fact, if you run across Iranians, or Persians, if you will, that live in this country, they will often identify themselves as Persians. Not Iranians, but Persians. Now, perhaps that's because there's a stigma to being an Iranian, or perhaps it's that they reject the leadership of the mullahs. I don't really know. But one thing I am fairly certain of, if we go for a regime change, or we look to overthrow the existing government in Iran, it's likely to be worse than what it is now. Because we have a long track record of that's happened. If you doubt me, look at, I don't know, Tunisia, Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, I guess. What am I forgetting? Oh, Libya. Those never really seem to work out in our favor. Somebody ought to maybe remind themselves that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So when I'm talking about old enemies, that's, at the grand national scale here. But let's bring it back home, right? That is one of the things that I think I specialize here, is keeping things local. When you're talking about old enemies, are you really talking about people that hate you or want to see you unalived? No, sometimes it's just straight up political disagreement. Sometimes it's people that have a difference of opinion, or that they're working to dismiss you, cancel you. So at what point do you determine that an enemy is a threat rather than just a nuisance? And I would suggest to you that in a factionalized political situation that we currently live in, up to the point that you look at ruining people's lives, it's just politics, right? You're going to talk poorly about your opponent. You're going to take actions to unseat them. You're going to level scandalous accusations at them. But by and large, that's all stuff fought over in public. There's no lasting consequence other than a little embarrassment. But it's really interesting when you start involving third parties or the state. At that point, do you cross a line of which there's no return? I don't know. It's something to consider. Is it an enemy or just somebody that's bitter? Is it an enemy or somebody that just acts foolishly in desperation? I don't know. But again, this is where objectiveness helps. This is where sitting back and thinking about things or considering what's at play here will serve you well. We can't all make knee-jerk reactions all the time, every time, right? When I was a younger man, flashes of anger came quite easily. Now, I will say that anger never manifested itself in anything more than perhaps yelling, raising your voice, ugly look on your face. And as long as that's where it stops, well, nobody really gets seriously hurt, so they say. But we have to consider, don't actions have long-term effects? When you do something objectively to hurt somebody else for no apparent reason other than, well, they hurt my feelings, does that make you any better? Are you accomplishing what it is you sought to do? I don't know. I doubt it. So when we squeeze it down to this very local level and we consider personal interactions or things going on in our own lives, can you not reflect that up to what it looks like at a national or international level? Can you not see where maybe, just maybe, that affects everything else that's going on at those levels? It is necessary that we do these things. We have to have some reflection. 748 episodes into this. I know I've talked about this stuff. My wife says, in many ways, this is like a personal log of my time, right? And there's some truth to that. Because everything that I see and do is filtered through my personality, my intuition, my thought process. Does it mean that I'm always right? No. It just means that that's what I'm thinking about it right now. And let's be fair. As people grow, as they mature, things change. They become less dogmatic. Sometimes they become more. People evolve. They don't necessarily reinvent, though that has happened on occasion. The old saying that a tiger won't change his stripes is true. Apart from God, I believe that's probably always the case. But as I've said, if you claim to be a Christian, then something in your life needs to have been different from what it was before. That you should be growing. Yeah, I know, maybe some of you are, he's going down. No, I want you to consider this. I'm certain there are many people that knew me 30 years ago that probably wouldn't necessarily recognize me now. Is that good or bad? I would tell you I think I've grown a lot, and I think it's a good thing. But you need to be able to reflect on yourself as well. Is that true? Do you think that you can learn from your mistakes? Can you improve? So when we're looking at these things at a giant global scale, the Trump of 8 years ago isn't the Trump of now, but is he doing things differently because he's learned? Is he being more aggressive because he realizes the time matters more? I don't know. But again, this is giving benefit of the doubt. This is paying attention to what's going on. I reflect on my own life only because that helps me grasp what might be going on in somebody else's life. Perhaps I'm a little more open than I need to be. That's okay. I mean, look, if somebody wants to come after me, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. If there's one thing I've learned in life, running from a fight seldom long-term keeps you out of that fight. And hopefully these fights aren't physical. They're merely rhetorical. But all right, final comment. Went way long today, but final comment. I'm on social media. The only reason I'm really there is, one, to see what's going on, and two, to post my show. Occasionally I make some comments, not a lot. I've engaged with people from time to time. And I realized that it's not fruitful. I was on the McKinney Cares group about a week ago, and I was annoyed that somebody didn't give an example. They threw out a name, and then when I asked for clarification, it got turned into an attack on me. And I should have known better. I mean, this is unfortunately very common. It just is. And I just like, you know what? I don't need this. I went and deleted the whole thing. I went and deleted anything I'd ever put in there. Not because I have anything to hide. Just I don't have time for it anymore. It was not worth my effort. When you've got a group that supposedly has 40,000 people, but you see the same posts or the same type of posts from the same dozen people or half dozen people with the same, I don't know, dozen people making the same comments over and over and over again, it's like being bludgeoned. There's nothing new there. There's nothing to add. You know, these same people lecture you about having to get out of your silo, yet they've created their own silo. So when I say I'm tying up loose ends, I am. I see that my time there was a loose end, and I've tied it up. I'm just not going to go back there. Why? There's nothing to be gained. There are plenty groups on social media, and let me just say this unequivocally. Everything on social media is fake. There's very little real there. My standard response is going to be, going forward, to anybody that's in a local group, I'll respond once. If they keep going or they want further interaction, I say I'm happy to meet with you. Or you can DM me if you prefer. But I'm not going to do a back and forth anymore on social media. It's counterproductive. It doesn't help anybody. I mean, if we want to get out of the silos, we got to do it in a way that's productive, that's interactive. My friend is doing that. Again, I'm not sure what the outcome's going to be. I've said privately, I think there's 3 outcomes. We're not going to go into those. I stand by that. And so we're clear. He's still my friend. I still have his back. And you can come to me all you want, but I'm not going to throw the guy under the bus. I trust him. And while some of the things that may happen over the next couple of months may be something that I personally wouldn't do or say, you either trust somebody or you don't. You give them the benefit of the doubt or you don't. And I respect people that have a clear line and just say, you know what, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do that. I respect that. But we also don't punch right. We don't attack people that are on our same team. Unless and until they have completely abandoned all principles. In which case, well, then they're really not on the team anymore anyway. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's going to be the case. And I'm going to say it one more time. You have to extend grace to people, especially people that you know and you interact with. And if you can't extend them the grace, then perhaps the problem is you. And with that, this has been According to Callus, and I will see you on the other side, or perhaps even better, in real life.
Canceled by the big tech mafia, but inadvertently profiting from owning their stocks in a mutual fund or ETF? At Two Pillars, they believe that censorship is a form of violence and a business practice that does not promote human flourishing. In many cases, through their investigative screening process, they can help you divest from companies that are denying your God-given, inalienable right to speak freely. Hey, Patriots, Two Pillars believes it's time for conservatives to align their values and investments. Two Pillars is your place for impact investing in the parallel economy. Find out what's in your investment portfolio with a complimentary portfolio review. Contact them today to learn more. Call toll-free at 833-377-0051 or send an email to info@twopillarsam.com. That's info@twopillarsam.com. Get started today. Advisory services are offered through Jacob and Boaz Asset Management, LLC, doing business as Two Pillars Asset Management or Two Pillars, a registered investment advisor in the states of Texas and California. Two Pillars is not endorsed by any government agency and is not engaged in the practice of law or tax advice.